Are you struggling with heavy flooding periods, breast tenderness, and rage? Maybe there's a week in the month where you hate your partner and are screaming at the children for no reason. These are all symptoms of estrogen dominance, which we see in perimenopause. But don't worry, I am going to share with you some easy to implement tips that will help to make this whole transition a lot more easy and manageable. Hi, I'm Chelsea Green, holistic hormone specialist, and I help women transition from peri to postmenopause naturally using homeopathy, herbs, nutrition, and lifestyle measures. Hit the subscribe button if that sounds like the type of stuff that you are interested in, because that's what my channel is all about. So today we're talking all about estrogen dominance in perimenopause. But wait, don't we have low estrogen in perimenopause? Yes and no. So ideally in our premenopausal years, we have a nice healthy ratio of estrogen to progesterone. But what happens as we enter into the perimenopause is that progesterone falls first and we naturally end up in an estrogen dominant state. As we move through perimenopause, estrogen begins to fluctuate and it can go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows until eventually it falls away altogether and our periods stop and we enter the menopause. In an estrogen dominant state, estrogen can still be low, but it's just not in balance. It's not in the correct ratio with progesterone. So even though it's low, we have a lot more of it than progesterone. And that's what we mean by an estrogen dominant state in perimenopause. So what does estrogen dominance look like? Heavy flooding periods, even the development of fibroids, clotted periods, breast tenderness, lumpy breasts, acne, irritability, even rage. They can all be signs of an estrogen dominant state. In fact, hit the like button if you can relate to any of these symptoms. So what I often see in clinical experience is that women get to the late 30s, early 40s, and they know that something's just not quite right. Their cycle has become a little bit problematic. They don't feel right within themselves. They're experiencing these incredible mood swings. There could be anxiety, and they take themselves off to the doctor. Often the answer they get from the doctor is that you're too young to be in menopause and here you go, try the pill for your heavy flooding periods. Or if they keep pushing, they get offered antidepressants. When actually what is happening is they've entered this perimenopausal state where you have a combination of both estrogen dominance and a low progesterone state. And my last video was on low progesterone, so if you haven't watched that, make sure to check that out next. So in addition to those symptoms that I mentioned with estrogen dominance, we can see symptoms of low progesterone, including anxiety and depression, insomnia, and irregular cycles. Is it any wonder us women end up feeling really out of sorts? So before we move on to how we can deal with estrogen dominance, it's worth looking at things that actually can exacerbate the problem, that can add to estrogen dominant states beyond the perimenopause. The first of those is xenoestrogen. So they're environmental chemicals and toxins that we're exposed to every single day that mimic estrogen once they're in the bloodstream. They can come from things like plastic water bottles, our beauty products, and cleaning products. The pill is another big cause of an estrogen dominant state. So the pill works by switching off our own ovulation, so we stop making our own hormones and replaces those with synthetic hormones. And often we see toxicity after the pill. It is a toxin and it does live in the system for many, many years after taking it. State of your gut, liver, and bowels will dictate your ability to metabolize, detoxify, and eliminate excess estrogen. If any of those are not working properly, if any of those are a little bit sluggish, then excess estrogen can be reabsorbed back into the system. And finally, excess weight can be problematic. So when we have excess estrogen, we produce more fat cells, which hence we see women gaining weight at this time. And the problem with excess fat cells is that fat cells also produce estrogen. So we end up in this vicious cycle of producing too much estrogen, creating fat cells, and then the fat cells creating more estrogen. So what can we do about an estrogen dominant state? The first place I would start is recommending looking at your nutrition. So we want to be eating more fiber, lots and lots of fibrous vegetables. So the dark leafy greens, lots of cruciferous vegetables as well that help to break down estrogen. So broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts. These lovely fibrous vegetables vegetables will help to feed the gut microbiome, and within the microbiome we have something called the estrobolome, and the estrobolome helps to modulate estrogen levels. So we want a nice healthy gut for a great menopause experience. And within those vegetables, make sure to include some raw carrots. Raw carrots have a unique type of fiber that helps to sweep up and eliminate excess estrogen. Also with the gut, we want to be making sure we are getting lots of probiotics. So probiotic foods include natural yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, and if you don't like those types of foods, I would recommend taking a probiotic supplement. You do get what you pay for, so go for the best quality that you can afford. So probiotics populate the gut with good bacteria. Now we need to feed that bacteria, and that's the role of prebiotics. So we want to be eating lots of prebiotic fiber, and we can find that in things like asparagus, apples, onions, leeks, garlics, and cacao. And finally, we want to think about phytoestrogens. So phytoestrogens are plant-based estrogens, and no, they won't add to the problem. In fact, they will help to eliminate the dirty estrogens. Phytoestrogens include flax seeds, pomegranates, chickpeas, sesame seeds, and small amounts of organic fermented soy. Eating for the liver, so we want to increase our intake of bitter foods, so dandelion, rocket, watercress, that kind of thing. But also think about avoiding anything that's going to clog up the liver. That includes alcohol, caffeine, and excess medication. And of course, sugar is the big one as well. We want to be avoiding sugar because not only does it impair the ability of the liver to do its job properly, but it also causes havoc in the gut. We also want to be thinking about bowel health, and that means lots and lots of fiber. So again, flax seeds, chia seeds, psyllium husks, but also lots of water. You know, water helps the whole GI tract, so make sure you're well hydrated. Where possible, we want to be eating organic, but I know that's not financially viable for everyone. So what I recommend doing is following the Environmental Working Group. I will put the link in the show notes. The Environmental Working Group produce two lists that are worth following. One is called the Clean 15. That's the 15 cleanest non-sprayed crops that you could buy in non-organic form. And the other list is the Dirty Dozen, and that's the 12 most sprayed crops. So they're the ones that you really do want to buy organically. Both of these lists are updated annually, so make sure you go on their website, and I think you can subscribe to get those lists sent to you each year. We also want to try to avoid conventionally farmed meat and dairy products. These industries are known for using high levels of pesticides, antibiotics, and hormones, and we then ingest that via the food chain. So wherever possible, we want to be looking at grass-fed and organic. And when we're on the subject of toxins, where can you reduce your toxic exposure? So this is pretty much impossible to reduce all toxins. We live in a very toxic society, but just think about where can you reduce your exposure, particularly to the xenoestrogen. So avoiding bottled water, looking at your cleaning products and your beauty products, and thinking about filtering your water. I recommend a Berkey water filter, and again, I'll leave the link in that below. But even if you only have one of those Brita jugs, that will, there'll be some benefit to that. Also think about daily movement. So daily movement is just, all the walking around and that sort of thing we do during the day as opposed to formal exercise. This kind of daily movement will help to keep your weight under control. So if you have that excess fat cells from excess estrogen, but also it really helps the liver and the bowels to do their job properly. It helps to get everything moving. And finally, it goes without saying, we need to reduce our stress levels. And this is all about bringing up progesterone. So bringing progesterone and estrogen back into balance. So if you haven't watched my video on low progesterone, make sure to grab that next, because we need to be taking a nice holistic view, looking at what's going on with progesterone as well as what's going on with estrogen.